Now, Nick, there's a saying, mind the business that pays you. So, if you do not know, ViacomCBS has fired Nick. Yes. Want to talk about it? Let's debrief. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. You're tuned in to the debrief with your girl, me, Nova. How's everyone doing? So, if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. And if you are a new subscriber, welcome. Hopefully you'll join the family. So, how's everybody's week going? I know we're all probably preparing for the new week, as by the time this video comes out, it will be Sunday. So I won't waste any more time. Let's just hop right into it. The controversy for this week, Nick Cannon. He has been recently fired from ViacomCBS. If you do not know, Nick Cannon hosts a podcast on YouTube. It's called Cannon's Class. Now, he had a podcast on YouTube. His latest episode was last month, and he had a guest host, Professor Griff, and recent discussions from this podcast have resurfaced. It has caused a lot of controversy. There are claims that parts of his discussion from his podcast spewed hateful speech and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, okay? And as a result, Viacom has since fired Nick. Now, during this episode of Cannon's Class, Nick and Professor Griff had various conversations, right? And in this conversation, they praised the Nation of Islam's leader, Louis Farrakhan. And if you don't know who Louis Farrakhan is, he is a controversial minister. He is an anti-Semite who routinely accuses Jews of manipulating the U.S. government and controlling the levers of the world power. Okay? Now, both of the men went on to discuss conspiracy theories that involve the Rothschild, a prominent banking family, and asserted that black people are Semitic people by what Cannon says their birthright, and therefore cannot be anti-Semitic. Cannon also went on in this podcast to state it's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people. When we are the same people who they want to be. That's our birthright. We are the true Hebrews, okay? They also contended that black people are the true Hebrews and Jews have assumed that identity. Cannon goes on to argue in this podcast that lighter-skinned people, Jewish people, white people, Europeans are a little less and have deficiency that historically caused them to act out of fear and commit acts of violence to survive. They had to be savages, Cannon states. Before that, he went on after that to praise the Nation of Islam's leader, Louis Farrakhan. Okay? Now, who is Professor Griff? Okay? He was the co-host that was on that particular episode of Nick's podcast. So, if you don't know who Professor Griff is, real name Richard Griff. He was a member of the music group Public Enemy back in the day. Okay? Now, he caused some controversy in the late 80s. He went on to have an interview with the UK magazine on behalf of Public Enemy in 1988. And so he sat down with the melody maker and he stated various things such as, and I quote, "There's no place for gays." Okay? When God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, it was for that sort of behavior. And if the Palestinians took up arms, went into Israel and killed all the Jews, it'd be all right. Okay, so he made some homophobic and anti-Semitic remarks during this interview. But it wasn't until 1989, when Griffin sat down with the Washington Times, that the media firestorm really emerged. So during this interview, Griffin made numerous statements such as Jews are responsible for the majority of the wickedness in the world. And he went on to say various things as well, and that caused a mass uproar. And as a result from that, Professor Griff, I'll say, was no longer a part of Public Enemy. That's what I'll say. Now, in recent times, Professor Griff has since apologized for his remarks. He wasn't well informed. He wasn't really educated on the Jewish community and the LGBTQ community. And for that, he sincerely apologized. Now, as much as you can apologize, you know, what you say, it's out there. And sometimes it sticks with you. So there's that cloud over Professor Griff's head. Nonetheless, Professor Griff was on the podcast with Nick Cannon. So they get into this conversation and they discuss many of topics, and that has resurfaced. Now, I think it's fair that we understand kind of what really was said on Nick's podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and play a clip from his podcast so we all are on the same page. Now, before I do, you know, there have been claims of hateful speech and anti-Semitism, right? So I think it's fair that we understand what anti-Semitism really is before we listen to this video. So, anti-Semitism is the hostility to, prejudice, or discrimination against Jews. A person who holds such position is called an anti-Semite. Anti-Semitism is generally considered to be a form of racism. Now that we have that in our head, let's take a listen to what Nick said on his podcast, and I'll come back with the rest of my commentary.
So let's go to what it really is then. When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys, and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what, you know, Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear in that
just genetic annihilation,
deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul, that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear, they're acting out of low self-esteem, they're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this conquering barbaric mentality that they're coming out of Europe. They then said, in order for us to survive, we have to take what's not ours. and then they went into the land that actually where we are originated, and instead of trying to make friends, they said, we want what you got, because there's this mentality of whether it's the Caesars or even that we have to conquer.
Right.
So I say all that to say the context, and when we speak of whether it's Jewish people, white people, Europeans, the Illuminati, they were doing that as survival tactics to stay on this planet.
Right, because
we never had to do that.
Right, because they've learned when they circumnavigated the globe and they ran into these islands and these places, and we were already there to greet them.
Right, with open arms.
With open arms, teaching them, but then when
they were deficient.
They were deficient, so they wanted to get what they thought we had, and we did have it. So the rape took place of the woman. The theft took place of the natural resources.
And then that's when their disease.
Exactly.
That's where their mentality, because I'm trying to get to that place of how they were able to get control over the gods. How they were able to get control over their original.
Once they learned that, though, and now they raped and impregnated, left and came back, and they saw the child lighter, they said, wow, that's when they learned genetics. Genetic annihilation. So now you have to set up a system of white supremacy to control that.
Right.
So now we have 13 families here, Illuminati that's manipulating and controlling. Subgroups. Now we got to set up organizations.
Coming out of Europe.
You understand what I'm saying? And for that same system, now you're talking about survival, what you just laid out. Now it's fight or flight. Now we have to set up these systems in order to survive.
Right.
But listen, not just survive to get some damn some hamburger buns and some cheese. I'm talking about on a genetic level.
On the genetic, because they will, and that's even from the white nationalists to the white supremacy mentalities to Donald Trump himself wanting to build walls.
Right.
They're trying to keep what they consider purity.
Exactly, on a subconscious
they're trying to
level.
Stay alive.
Because sometimes they don't know why they acting out.
It's just been proven. It was National Geographic just put it out by 2050. Every person will be a person of color.
In a minute.
They saying that's as soon as 2050.
All right, so we've heard what Nick and Professor Griff said on that podcast. Now, since that time, YouTube has removed Nick's video from YouTube. Okay, so it's no longer on YouTube, given the rhetoric that took place on his podcast. Now, after clips from his podcast surfaced, Viacom has since fired Nick, and in a statement we'll read, Viacom says, ViacomCBS condemns bigotry of any kind, and we categorically denounce all forms of anti-Semitism. We have spoken with Nick Cannon about an episode of his podcast on Cannon Class on YouTube, which promoted hateful speech and spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. While we support ongoing education and dialogue in the fight against bigotry, we are deeply troubled that Nick has failed to acknowledge or apologize for perpetuating anti-Semitism, and we are terminating our relationship with him. We are committed to doing better in our response to incidents of anti-Semitism, racism, and bigotry. ViacomCBS will have further announcements on our efforts to combat hate of all kinds. All right. So, Viacom was not here for Nick and what Professor Griff had to say. They went to praising leader Farrakhan, and all hell break loose. Now, who is Viacom? All right, so ViacomCBS is an American diversified multinational mass media conglomerate formed through the merger of CBS Corporation and the second incarnation of Viacom in 2019, which were split from the original incarnation of Viacom in 2005. So, the Viacom and CBS were together from the start. They split in 2005, and then they came back together and merged again in 2019. Now, ViacomCBS owns a plethora of network channels, from Nickelodeon to Paramount Pictures, CBS Television Network, Comedy Central, MTV, BET, Showtime, and a number of other entertainment and media companies. Okay? All right. Now, I said, well, if Nick got fired, who is Nick's boss? So, I went to do a little digging. So, the CEO of ViacomCBS is Robert Bakish. Now, Robert joined Viacom in 1997. He became the CEO of Viacom in November 2016. And he maintained his role as CEO when Viacom and CBS remerged in 2019. Now, I really tried to dig deep into Robert Bakesh's background from a religious standpoint. It was very hard to confirm where his roots come from. Now, there is speculation out there that his roots have some tie to the Jewish community. Now, we all have heard that the Jewish community's power runs deep, right? In terms of them controlling a lot of power within the U.S. and various companies. And I think ViacomCBS is no different, okay? So they kind of, tuned in to what the podcast was about, and they were a little perturbed. I will say that. Now, once Viacom came forward and announced that they were parting ways with Nick Cannon, Nick Cannon takes to Facebook, okay? Now, Nick goes to Facebook and writes a 4-page letter, and he addressed it with a twist. And when he wrote them, they better apologize. No, I'm just playing, you guys. But no, seriously. Nick took to Facebook and wrote a long dissertation of a response to Viacom. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to read that entire statement. I'm going to read parts and bits of what he said that plays a role into our discussion today. Now, before I read this, just first thing, Nick from the beginning did take ownership and apologize to the Jewish community if his words inadvertently offended their community. So I want to put that on the record because there's a lot of misinformation out there in social media. Okay, so let's get into some main parts of Nick's dissertation, shall we? All right. So July 15th, Nick releases on Facebook a response. In this response, he states, "I am deeply saddened in a moment so close to reconciliation that the powers that be misused an important moment for us to all grow closer together and learn more about one another. Instead, the moment was stolen and hijacked to make an example of an outspoken black man. I will not be bullied, silenced, or continuously oppressed by any organization, group, or corporation. I am disappointed that Viacom does not understand or respect the power of the black community. My time at Viacom also birthed one of my other greatest creative accomplishments, their longest running comedy series and the most successful hip-hop programming in television history, Wild 'N Out. An ideal in which I self-financed out my own pocket and presented to MTV. I created a billion-dollar brand that expanded across multi-tiered empire that is still Viacom's biggest digital brand, touring business, talent discovery, an incubation system, and successful restaurant franchise. Based on trust and empty promises, my ownership was swindled away from me. For Viacom to be so deceptive is no surprise. They have been mistreating and robbing our community for years, underpaying talent on their biggest brands like Love and Hip Hop, all of BET programming, and of course, Wild 'N Out. As for Viacom, who is now on the wrong side of history, I will continue to pray for you. I don't blame any individual. I blame the oppressive and racist infrastructure. Systemic racism is what this world was built on and was the subject in which I was attempting to highlight in the recent clips that have been circulating from my podcast. If I have furthered the hate speech, I wholeheartedly apologize. But now I am the one making demands. I demand full ownership of my billion-dollar Wild 'N Out brand that I created, and they will continue to misuse and destroy without my leadership. I demand that the hate and backdoor bullying cease, and while we are at it, now that the truth is out, I demand the apology. All right. So we heard what Nick's response was to Viacom. And for the most part, I'll be honest, Nick had a lot of support from the people. I think the community really stood together and supported Nick. We're like, hey, Nick, forget Viacom. We support you. You created Wild 'N Out. They can't take that from you. I mean, Diddy even came out and said, Nick, bring your show over to Revolt TV. I got you. Now, what happens after that? Well, we don't really know, but one can assume that, and from a corporate standpoint, the pressure was on. Because Wild 'N Out is Nick's baby. And I'm really shocked that he does not have ownership to that show. And Viacom used that against Nick. Now, Nick has a lot of roles in different television shows that are on Viacom's under Viacom's umbrella. But I think Wild 'N Out was his baby, and I feel if he had rights to Wild 'N Out, and if he's fired, his show comes with him, he'd have probably chunked up the deuces to Viacom. But seeing as how that's not the case, now Nick has come out and he released another statement. Okay, so let's read. On my podcast, I use words and reference literature I assume to be factual to uplift my community. Instead, turned out to be hateful propaganda and stereotypical rhetoric that pained another community. For this, I am deeply sorry, but now together we can write a new chapter of healing. Now, he went on and released additional statements and so forth, right? And I think at that time, a lot of responses from social media was like, now Nick is backtracking and pussy popping. He backpedaling pretty much on his original statement that basically called out Viacom. Okay, now he then goes and releases another statement by saying, I hurt an entire community and it pained me to my core. I thought it couldn't get any worse. Then I watched my own community turn on me and call me a sellout for apologizing. Good night, enjoy, Earth. Okay, all right. So now we kind of know where we're at currently, right? Now that I have given all of the facts to you, let's go ahead and debrief. Now, Nick, here's my first thing. I think that, freedom of speech. I understood what Nick was trying to do, where he was trying to speak about topics that support his Black community. But I feel, number one, this is where you failed, Nick. If you're going to go ahead and do a podcast and you're going to make an argument and you're going to incorporate another community in that argument, I think you have to do your fact checking, okay? Because when you talk about another community that's not your own, it can become a very sensitive topic. And I think that he wasn't well informed and he wasn't well versed and educated on the Jewish community to make those statements that indirectly caused controversy and racial or hateful speech, I should say, and anti-Semitism. Okay, that's the first thing, Nick. Now, you can have whatever guests you want to have on your podcast. That is your right. But, you know, Professor Griff has been very controversial in the past. And although he has apologized since that time, I'm sure that through the course of years, he has been able to educate himself. Now, in the clip that we listened to, Nick did a lot of talking. And Professor Griff really couldn't get a word in edgewise. And I think, Nick, that's the opportunity for you to maybe silence your voice just a little bit and allow the person that you brought on your podcast to inform and educate on what he has learned throughout the years, seeing as how, you know, he had a rocky start in controversy and some of the statements that he's made. I think third, you know, as much as you can praise whoever you want, I think there's a level of understanding when it comes to the Nation of Islam's leader, Farrakhan, that who has been deemed as an anti-Semite, that you have to trail that conversation with caution, okay? Next, I'm gonna say, now, Nick, you didn't own the rights to Wild 'N Out. That's crazy. And I felt like before you decide to practice your freedom of speech, you need to make sure all your loose ends is tied. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, regardless of your fame, your fortune, of what you have accomplished, you still have a boss. You still have a boss, Nick. You still have a boss. It is, you know, corporate politics at its finest. Now, they had to go ahead and make a statement out of you for practicing your right, okay, to freedom of speech and not knowing what you were talking about. And I think that's very unfortunate. Now, I truly believe that Nick didn't go into this podcast intending to offend anybody. I don't think he did that at all. I think he was trying to bring a conversation to light that he wasn't well versed in and wasn't well educated in, and inadvertently caused him to be in the hot seat, okay? As far as, you know, now persons are coming after Nick because he backtracked and so forth. I honestly didn't see that in his apology. I felt that from the beginning when he took to Facebook, he acknowledged his Jewish community in ensuring that he made a wholehearted apology. He did not intend to offend that community. And he intended to hold Viacom accountable, right? Through his apology, I haven't necessarily come across him directly apologizing to Viacom. Maybe he has. I'm not sure, and I just didn't catch it. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, I think we all need to realize one thing that is Nick's heart is Wild 'N Out. Okay, he created a show that, whether you like it or not, gave a platform to up-and-coming comedics. And I mean, it's really the BET Comic View of its time. I mean, it's a really good show. And to be let go from Viacom, and to know that, you know, with that parting ways also comes, you know, hey, Wild 'N Out is not yours. I mean, I'm sure that was definitely a blow to Nick. And for that, sometimes you need to play nice because you want to walk away with what you've created. Now, I don't know what deal he went into when he brought the concept of writing out to MTV, you know, in terms of having full ownership. But as reports are saying, Wild 'N Out falls under Viacom, and that comes with Viacom. So therefore, Nick will no longer be the host of that. I think that is, I'm sure that's weighing hard on Nick. And, you know, if he has to backtrack and pussy pop, you know, on his words, so that he can try to come to the table and discuss a way for him to be able to own the rights of Wild 'N Out, then I think that's what he needs to do. And I don't think that we should be too hard on him. Okay. Now, Viacom. It's mighty funny, okay? Now, y'all own MTV. I'm not sure if they own VH1, but y'all have no problem, okay, airing episodes like Love and Hip Hop, where sometimes the black community can make a fool out of the black community, right? You have no problem playing those types of reality shows, right? Those entertainments. You have no problem with that. But all of a sudden, the moment that, you know, some comments are made, and let's just be honest, they weren't directful. It wasn't a directful hate speech, in my opinion. It wasn't. I think that it was a conversation that just wasn't well informed, and anyone could see that. But Viacom took that and ran with it, honey. But you know what I think? Now, in corporate America, sometimes a company just want to get rid of you, but they don't have the means or the justification on getting rid of you at that time. So they'll find any and everything. And when something does happen, there you go. That's it. That's what we'll get them on. We'll let them go. And I think in this case, I think it's interesting. I think that all of a sudden with this recent clip that has resurfaced, now they're pulling the plug from Nick. From what I take from it, they've been wanting to get rid of Nick, y'all. They've been wanting to get rid of Nick. And they were just waiting on their time to do so, because Nick has started to become more outspoken. He has started to become a voice for the black community. He has started to raise his hand. He has started to object to things that's not right in the industry. And sometimes when you make a little bit too much noise, see, they don't like that. Corporate don't like that. Corporate don't like when you make too much noise now, honey. They don't like that at all. And I think they were waiting for the right time to go ahead and pull the carpet from Nick, and they did. Now, I'm hopeful that Nick can do whatever he can to get the rights to Wild 'N Out, because, I mean, the show will not be the same without him. But I also think it's a learning lesson for Nick at the end of the day. You have to mind the business that pays you. You can't ever think that you're too good, or that you're untouchable, or that they can't do anything to you when you have a boss at the end of the day. You have to go into, you know, if you want to speak for the black community, it's your right. I'm all for it. Power to the people. But you have to be strategic with what you do. You have to be strategic, because, you know, it's politics to this game. And, you know, they don't like to see us too high up on the totem pole, honey, because they'll pull you right back down, honey. They'll pull you right back down. Now, from what I understand, Fox has come out with a statement and saying, hey, you know what? When it comes to Nick Cannon's relationship with The Masked Singer, he is the host of The Masked Singer. That's on the Fox channel. You know, we are going to continue the relationship with him. Now, I hope y'all not fooled by that. See, now Fox has already caught themselves in a whirlwind of controversy, okay? So they had to be strategic too. They want to be the champions and say, you know what, we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to continue our relationship with Nick Cannon, but they're not fooling nobody, okay? They're being strategic, okay? Because they've had a lot of controversy for their channel, okay? So, I mean, I don't know, you guys. It's an unfortunate situation. I hate that Nick found himself in the hot chair. But you know, you got to be more smarter than that. I feel like they watching us, you guys. They watching, they peeping. And if they can catch you, they will. And they will fire you. But I don't know, you guys. You tell me what you think. Tell me your thoughts, your opinions on this topic. Let me know if there's a topic that you would like for me to talk on, and I'll do that. And other than that, that's all my commentary for the day. So I'll catch you guys on the next video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share if you care, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.